here's all your coffee. And there's some rainbow there. And this is where all the white cloth stuff is.
What are we going to say? Welcome home!
It doesn't make any difference. You came back, you gotta be careful. You got.
Well, I said, otherwise, we'll have a competition. We'll have what you want. We'll have a 60-border squad. You want to buy
Everybody's eyes look.
Well, I said, otherwise, we'll have a competition. We'll have what you want. Well, I said, otherwise, we'll have a competition. We'll have what you want. We'll have a 60-border squad. People are coming here and
Maggie's well, I saw she died, but I didn't know how she died. Yeah. Yeah. I thought if anybody could do it, you could do it.
They're being given out at the table.
Well, he said, tomorrow I may be here in an envelope, but I just haven't put all the in for the day.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting as many pictures as I can for staff, okay?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too.
All right. Thank you, you guys. Appreciate it.
And here now.
I suppose, yeah.
Katie.
Right back here.
Prepare to post the colors. Post the colors. Shoulder, arms, about, face, forward, march.
Thank you all. The game is officially started.
Yay! All right. Thank you. Thank you. What's that?
Handshake. All right. Can I give you this from the Minnesota Elks?
Prices too.
Oh, okay.
Now, thank you, welcome home.
So over your shirt.
pleased to begin today by introducing Elks Chaplain Lottie Oxlaxon, who will begin our program by offering a brief prayer. Lottie?
O loving God, be with us today as we honor these Vietnam veterans who never received a welcome home. Help us to heal the wounds they've had in their hearts. We honor and respect them for the great sacrifices they've made while serving our country. May we never forget those who made the supreme sacrifice, as so to secure for our nation the blessings of life, liberty, and justice. May our observance be a timely reminder that our freedom was purchased at a high cost and should never be taken for granted. Bless the families and friends of those that we are honoring today, and bless the veterans who will come with memories, stories, and tears to enrich this day. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Lottie. Now to read his proclamation, it's my privilege to introduce to you the Mayor of Red Wing, Mayor Sean Dowse.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. It's a great honor and privilege to be here today. And on behalf of the citizens of Red Wing, I want to welcome back the Army. I want to welcome back the Marines. I want to welcome back the Navy. I want to welcome back the Air Force. And I want to welcome back the Coast Guard. Thank you all for your service and what you have done for our country. Welcome home, Vietnam Veterans Day Proclamation. Whereas the United States of America Vietnam War commemoration provides all Americans with the opportunity to recognize, honor, and thank our Vietnam veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice during the Vietnam War. And whereas the Vietnam War commemoration was authorized by Congress and established under the Secretary of Defense and was launched by presidential proclamation to extend from Memorial Day 2012 through Veterans Day 2025. And whereas this commemoration includes the 9 million Americans who served in the United States Armed Forces during this period and makes no distinction between those who served in country, in theater, or were stationed elsewhere during those 20 years, as all answered the call of duty, and whereas more than 11,000 organizations across America have joined with the Department of Defense as commemorative partners to honor our nation's Vietnam-era veterans. And whereas March 29th, 1973 was the last day that U.S. troops were on the ground in Vietnam. Now therefore, I, Sean M. Dowse, Mayor of Red Wing, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim the 30th day of March 2019 as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Those are kind words. I saw Barb Haley in the... Barb, would you like to come up and say a few words? Hey.
Just very briefly, I want to simply say thank you and welcome home. And I want to let you know as your state representative that you have a voice in St. Paul. We work on veterans legislation every session, and it's probably one of the things I can say is mostly nonpartisan because we care. And so know that you have a voice, and if there's ever anything I can do for any of you, please don't hesitate to call. We're funding veterans homes hopefully this year and working on things like property tax exclusions for surviving spouses. So know that we talk frequently of you and honor you every single day.
Thank you, Barb. We should all thank our event chair, Lottie Oslakson, her organizing committee members, the Red Wing Elks Lodge, and all its volunteers for their efforts in making this day happen. I have to also thank the Red Bull Historic Military Vehicle Association and the St. Croix Valley Vietnam Veterans of America for enhancing this event by providing the Vietnam-era vehicles that are parked outside. I've been asked to give you a little history. When Vietnam won its independence from France in 1954, much like Korea, they divided the country into two nations, a communist-dominated North Vietnam and a democratic South Vietnam, divided by a demilitarized zone of 5 kilometers, about 3 miles on each side of the 17th parallel. U.S. involvement in Vietnam actually began on November 1st, 1955, when then President Dwight Eisenhower sent our Military Advisory Assistance Group into Vietnam to train the South Vietnamese Army in their fight against the communist-supported National Liberation Front, the Viet Cong, and the People's Army of Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese Army. Under President John Kennedy, this advisory group grew from 900 people to 16,000 people. When the first U.S. combat troops arrived in Vietnam on May 8, 1965, Lyndon Johnson was our president. During this Vietnam War, our nation lost its innocence. For the first time in our history, people could see the horrors of war live on the nightly news. They saw atrocities on both sides that many of them were not ready to see. Opposition to U.S. war involvement in Vietnam began as early as 1964, and it gained a broad social movement throughout the ensuing several years. Draft cards were burned, young men fled to Canada, and a counterculture developed that rejected materialism and authority, experimented with illicit drugs, and actively protested against the Vietnam War. Although formal negotiations with North Vietnam for a peaceful settlement to the war began in Paris on May 10, 1968, U.S. casualties in Southeast Asia continued to escalate. Richard Nixon won the campaign in 1968 with a platform that he would end the war in Vietnam and bring peace with honor to our nation. Peace with honor was not accomplished overnight. The agreement on ending the war and restoring peace in Vietnam, the Paris Peace Accord, was eventually signed on January 27, 1973, 5 years later. On March 29, 1973, the last U.S. combat forces left South Vietnam, ending our direct involvement in the Vietnam War. By December 1973, only 50 U.S. military personnel remained in South Vietnam. Gerald Ford assumed the presidency on August 9, 1974, becoming the 5th U.S. president during the Vietnam War years. Charles McMahon, Darwin Judd, the names of the last 2 men who were killed in country in Vietnam. The 2 men, both United States Marines, were killed in a rocket attack on April 29, 1975, 1 day before the fall of Saigon. The Mayaguez incident, a deadly fight to rescue a ransomed cruise ship, a ransomed container ship crew, took place on an island off of Cambodia against the Khmer Rouge. That event added the last 41 names to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial
and it officially ended U.S. military operations in the Vietnam War on May 15, 1975. Until this current conflict in Afghanistan, Vietnam was our nation's longest war. 2,709,918 U.S. service personnel served in Vietnam. Another 693,182 served in the broader Southeast Asia theater, including 514,300 of those on ships offshore. We suffered 58,220 killed in action, including 8 female nurses, 1,626 missing in action, and 304,000 wounded, 75,000 of those severely. Of the killed in action, 68.8% occurred in the years 1967, 1968, 1969, while peace was trying to be solved. 68,000 Minnesotans were involved in this conflict, including men and women from Red Wing and the surrounding area. In Washington, D.C., 1,077 of their names are engraved on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. We may have some Gold Star family members in the audience today. Please, I saw a couple of gold stars on the map. Please raise your hand if you lost a family member. Thank you for their service. Thank you very much for their service. It's unfortunate, but due to the effects of Agent Orange and PTSD, every day the lives of our men who served in Vietnam are being taken from us. Everyone who served in Vietnam and earned this Vietnam Service Medal had their own personal story to tell. Gosh, I guess mine's out there. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Colonel Richard J. Johnson, United States Marine Corps retired, who served 2 tours of duty in the Republic of Vietnam. Colonel Johnson.
Thank you very much. When you come up here and you think about Vietnam, you think of about 1,000 stories. But I'm going to go back to 1965. I arrived in Vietnam in June of 1965, shortly after the first landing. During that first year there, I would be assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 12th Marines, an artillery battalion, in command of Battery E, at that time as a captain. There's many stories I can tell, but that little 5 howitzer battery was as far south of Da Nang into the enemy territory as any other battery. 6 guns boomed during the night, attacking various avenues of approach and around the area that the Viet Cong would use. I'd like to think about the forward observers. We have 4 forward observers, and they go out with every infantry unit. And sometimes when they were back, they were sent out with the South Vietnamese Army units. I'm proud to say that they saw and came back alive, but saw tremendous action. One of those was Harvey Barnum, who was given the Medal of Honor. As we go through life, 2 o'clock in the morning, you can wake up and think about Vietnam. I remember talking to Cal Eastland, who ran a bomber plane in the Pacific in World War II. He said it never left me. And I think that's true for the veterans here. Well, I could talk about various aspects of combat, but I'm going to share with you a touching story. We were in an area with a lot of poor village people lived. And they came to the mayor came to the battery one day, or we'd call him the chief, and he said, the Viet Cong are going to come. We know they're coming tonight. They're going to take our money, they're going to take our rice, and they'll take our young men as beasts of burden to carry supplies from North Vietnam, South Vietnam. Can you help us? We said yes. We set up a Marine Corps patrol. The Marine Corps patrol caught all of them. But in the ensuing battle, a girl, maybe 10 years old, received a grenade fragment in the temple. The Marine sergeant called me and he said, I think we could save her life. So I said, we'll meet you. In the meantime, the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines had a Navy doctor there. And I alerted him. And we met him at the Jeep with a medevac helicopter there. And she was picked up and medevac to the Navy hospital in Da Nang, where an outstanding Navy neurosurgeon saved her life. But the story doesn't end there. We took the grandfather and her brother down to the hospital to see his granddaughter. He was particularly perplexed in the fact that he had so much to take care of. His son-in-law was in the South Vietnamese Army, and he was trying to take care of 4 children, and they were poor. I want to tell you, poor. He went down there with us, with her brother. We would go see her periodically, and she was moved to the Catholic hospital in Da Nang. And she was slowly improving. The brother always went, but the grandfather didn't. But this time we went down, and the grandfather decided he was going to come. When I traveled down there, I always had an interpreter with me. Coming back, the grandfather started talking to me rather quickly in his language. I couldn't understand it. So I asked the interpreter what he was saying. He was saying, we don't have much money. I've got 4 grandchildren. Would you take this girl to America with you? He didn't ask for much. He said, maybe you could spend a certain amount of money. And I said, I would love to do that, but I'm unable to do so. I hope today she's upright, she's doing well. But the plight of the people in Vietnam were unbelievable. So I don't dwell too much on the combat, but I think of the people that were affected, from Agent Orange and it goes on. I think about the press. I was in the headquarters for a good part of my time and the politics. And you wouldn't believe what I have to tell you. But I also would like to come to the home front here. Do you know what it's like to be a loved one and see that sedan drive up by there, that Marine sedan? Out gets a Marine, maybe a chaplain, maybe the police chief. And the person that sees that knows it's bad news. Either someone was killed or someone was wounded. I want to talk to the people that were on the home front here who had to put up with some of the insults because their men or women were serving in Vietnam. But most importantly, God bless them for their patience and for the wonderful care they gave those veterans when they came home, because some of them were unable to walk. And these are some of my memories from Vietnam, and I'll stop there. I can say that I came back in 69 and 70. People say, why did you do that? I said, they sent me back for remedial training. Anyway, last of all, I want to say a special thank you. We have a person here that's reticent to receive recognition. I wish that Dottie Askeson would stand up here and we can give her a round of applause. This was her idea. And thank you to your committee.
Oh,
yes. Right
And
from
thank
the
you very much. You had a great hand in it too.
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
I guess if I was in the corporate world, they'd call what I'm doing next a little housekeeping. I want to say, honored veterans, when you arrived today, you should have received a lapel pin and some tickets for our drawing. Please make sure that you have selected your baskets and have all of your tickets in by 4:00 p.m. because our drawing is going to begin at 4:15 p.m. and we will have all of our winners posted shortly thereafter. Your name and your telephone number on the ticket so that if you're not present, we can at least contact you to tell you to come and pick up your prize. We received tremendous support and are grateful to all of our event sponsors and our donors, those who gave us financial assistance or they donated the many items that we have here to create an unforgettable event for all our Vietnam veterans. The Elks Club obviously has been decorated today with numerous items of interest. There are thank you cards here on the back, on podiums in the other rooms that were written by elementary students and employees from ProAct. Please, as you hear, take the time. Some of them will put a laugh or a smile on your face. Some of them will put a tear in your eye. We have pins in this map. And the gold pins in this map represent all of our Vietnam era veterans and where they served in the Southeast Asia Theater. You'll see some in the water offshore. You might see some in Thailand, but you'll see a number of gold pins in the South. Over here we have set up our POW MIA table and all the symbolism that goes with that missing man. In the room with the fireplace back here, we've got a DVD running, we've got some photographs, some uniforms, and some other memorabilia that's on display. And obviously, as I mentioned, outside there's a deuce-and-a-half truck and a Huey helicopter for you to inspect. If you have not already eaten, the buffet is going to continue serving food until 4:30 p.m. At 5:00 p.m., just outside the building, our all-veterans firing squad will fire a 21-gun salute, and Terry Nelson will be playing tabs to honor all those men and women we lost in the war. In accordance with the Vietnam Veteran Commemoration, as they entered, we presented anyone who was on active duty in the United States Armed Forces at any time during the war years a Vietnam veteran's lapel pin. They all answered the call to duty. They all were treated as the face of this unpopular war. Many were subjected to some form of disrespect. They were shunned. They were called names. They were spit on. They were otherwise abused. They were never welcomed home. We gather today to finally say to these people those two simple words, welcome home. If you'd join me all, please. Welcome home. Representing the Vietnam helicopter pilots, if you'd like to speak for a moment, I think they're looking for some recruits.
And I will be very brief indeed. I represent the Upper Midwest chapter of the Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association. If there are any of the veterans here who flew or pilots in helicopters in Vietnam or the surrounding area, you are eligible to join. We have a very active group. We meet 6 times a year for lunch or a couple times for supper. Tim Klister, who's here. Tim, would you raise your hand?
Back here.
He's back by the bar. He's got application forms if anybody cares to join. Thank you very much for your attention.
That concludes our formal program. As I said, there's lots to see and do. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks! I thought I seen you sitting there. Hi! I wanted everybody to be.
Like I said, there's so many. I mean, it's not like
My God, put it in the map, Mike. That devil do. I know it. Okay, so here you go. Excuse me, I got a gold star to put on. Long and tall.
I'm almost there. I'm gonna fill it all out.
Yes. I said his name many times. Close to that four, we call it the four-letter word. L-L-A-O-S. L-A-O-S, Laos, we call that the four-letter word. He said, boy, I said, you're safe today. I couldn't. Well, you can't get... You know? On the coast. Really? The Navy guys on the golf.
Ron Keller, number 10, Larry Bird, number 11, Bill Baker, number 12, Rich Artist, number 13, Dan Kretzer, 23, Nick Evans, 24, George Johnson, 25, Wayne Gustafson, 51, James Grizzle, and 52, Gary Schumacher. If I read your name, please step over to the table and pick up your prizes before you go.
Yay! That's off big press!
Yeah.
I just want to give you a recap on, I think it was an excellent day today. We had more than expected people here. Everybody was enjoying themselves, and I think we have some people here that are maybe healed a little bit of the wounds that we've been trying to do. Thank you for all coming.